The Pretender by the Foo Fighters. I'd say this is a fantastic test in stamina and foot speed. But first things first, and most importantly, it's about hitting the hell out of the drum kit. It feels good, it is cathartic, but I'm going to teach you how to do it properly. For those of you, just like me, who skip intros to things, bear in mind, this is not a note-by-note tutorial of this song. I'm telling you now, because what we actually do here is go through the details that you need to know if you are trying to recreate this song or learn it in a pinch. But if you do want the full transcription, feel free to check that out. The link is below. So, let's get into it. Let's hit some drums, because that's what happens almost straight out the gate after this guitar intro. Yes, it does sound like I'm hammering nails, and this is what you want. This is rock music, people. But a good way to achieve a very loud sound with minimal effort is to use what we call rim shots. I mentioned this in the other Foo Fighters video because it is extremely relevant to both. And generally in rock music because you want to hit the drums hard. Anyway, rim shot, you want to hit the drum in the middle and also at the rim at the same time. Really gives it a clang. Not always appropriate, but sounds good and feels good. So I suggest you get used to that. It does take a little while to get used to it and to get the technique fully down and get them really consistent, but it is worth the time and effort because once you start using them, you will never stop using them. Get them in both hands too. Don't think you can get away with not doing them in both hands. I see you. I see you too. It's probably the same person who skipped the intro. I see you. So we got a string of these rim shots, and you don't have to make them rim shots as long as you're hitting this drum really hard. And if you're going to do that, I suggest you use the proper technique, stick control. You're not a robot. It doesn't all come from the shoulder, nor the elbow. It's going to be really inefficient. You're going to strain a lot, and you're just going to get very tired very quickly and probably do yourself a mischief. So don't do it like that. So keep the grip between your thumb and your forefinger, but also whip open your hand so your fingers are open. And then you bring your whole arm and hand down. And as you do that, you whip forward with the stick with your fingers. You close your hand. So up, pull from your wrist, really important, up from the wrist, flip it back, open the fingers, close the fingers on the way down. Don't leave your pinky fingers out either. This may look like it's in some way, shape or form proper technique. It's not. Don't do this. Don't recommend it. You might break a finger, especially if you're hitting things really hard, like this. You don't want that. By this point, we should know how to hit a drum reasonably hard, at least in one stroke, which is all we need for this intro. If you're doing a performance and you really want to ham this up, go for it. Fortunately, this drum wasn't extremely in tune before we started today. But you can only do that and only smack it really hard if you can keep it in time. Again, we're going to use our best friend, the metronome, to do that as well. Or you can play to the song, but metronome's probably better. I suggest a metronome. You have to be able to keep control while you're also incorporating the bass drum after those first 4 bars or so. If you don't take the time to develop that control, it's just going to sound quite sloppy and it might throw everyone else in the band out of time, so be really conscious of that. Slightly later down the line, we also have a flam. I've talked about these before. Really simple way to approach them. One stick all the way up, the other stick halfway up, drop them at the same time, and make sure they have a doo-dum kind of sound, but not too far apart. That's 2 separate notes. This counts as the same note. It's called a flam. Just make sure you take the time to make that sound consistent so every flam sounds almost the same. If you kind of follow this rule of thumb, one all the way up, one halfway up, you won't really go wrong. Next on my list of things I really want to talk about with this song is this drum fill. So cool. And there are 2 different techniques you can use to approach this with the bass drum. So the first would be the one I use generically to just get faster bass drums and a little bit more control, which is to, if your heel is down, lift up the heel slightly and put the foot back. Use the weight of your leg to your advantage and also the use of the spring. Because remember, the pedal is sprung loaded, it's trying to work for you. Again, it kind of feels like bouncing a basketball, but you can make it a bit more driving if you press your foot down a bit harder. So you got that, but getting 2 notes out of that can be a little bit tricky. So the technique I use, and I'm very fortunate with this because I'm a woman, so I have slightly smaller feet, which means I can use a technique called heel toe, and I love this technique. don't know why. It just feels like it flows so nicely. And it is as it sounds. You get 2 notes. One comes out the heel and the next comes out the toes. It becomes one fluid motion. Obviously, if your foot is coming way off the back of the plate, then that might be really tricky for you to get. If you can't get this, don't worry. Some people literally have feet too big for it. Some people get bigger pedals just to be able to do it. One last way you could approach this with the bass drum technique, I know I said there was 2, but there's actually 3, is slide technique. I personally don't use it very often, but it's equally as valid as all the rest of them. You just end up sliding your foot forward on the pedal. Lovingly demonstrated here by our foot model, resident foot model.
Who wishes to remain anonymous.
So coming quickly back to this exact fill, when it comes to approaching it, that means you can apply whatever technique works for you. Remember, there are no real strict rules with drumming. Go with what feels most comfortable and comes easiest to you. Towards the end of the first verse and going into the pre-chorus, we're actually copying the guitar riff, da-da, 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 with the bass drum. Really important here that you try your best to sync up either with the song that you're listening back to. If you need the timestamp, it is here, and you can link straight to the real song here. Or if you're playing with a band, make sure you really practice that if you can with that guitarist. Really get it synced up together, get it really locked, because it'll just have so much more impact if you do. In the pre-chorus, it gets a little bit busier. It follows the same kind of pattern, but it just adds an extra bass drum, adds an extra layer of intensity, which is kind of what you want leading into a chorus. Like I said, really important you stay relaxed for that bit. Otherwise, your foot's going to fall off. The chorus, all we really need to talk about here is playing the ride bell instead of just a normal part of the ride cymbal. Be aware to use the shoulder of the stick if you want a really big, wide sound on the bell of the ride. Like that. Tip. Sounds a bit weedy, so give it a good wallop. Other than that, just make sure everything's nice and synced up. Remember, we've got a lot of bass drums going on, so take it nice and slow. Use a metronome. Get everything nice and clean and synced up. Togetherness is key. Next up, if you're thinking about making the song more of your own, just a point of reference when it comes to making up fills, there's a really useful figure that I think just is really accurate across almost all Foo Fighters songs. That up to speed is just tasty. So you got I think that works pretty well across Foo Fighters songs, actually a lot of rock songs in general. It's just a really tasty lick just to have in your back pocket and just get down. I'm going to jump straight ahead now to the bridge because that's one of the best parts of the song, and it's a fantastic way and kind of masterclass in how to build up layers within a song on drums. We got 5 lots of 4 bars. So first 4 bars, you're going to do a bass drum on 2 and 4. 1. And then you've got the floor tom coming in on 8th notes and the bass drum going to quarter notes. Even though this is picked up in pace, I'd keep the dynamics reasonably low because you want this to kind of build momentum even more. Really save that last bit of volume for the very end of the build-up because we're going straight to a cut-off to basically no volume whatsoever and just a guitar and vocal. So it has so much more impact if you really take it up at that last moment and then drop it all away. The second to last group of 4 is where it gets really spicy because we're going to keep things almost the same, but we're going to open the hi-hat up. But on beat 3, we're going to move this left hand over to the snare drum. Really important here, you try not to speed up, keep things nice and groovy, nice and relaxed, but maybe bring up the volume, keep it intense. And then this last group of 4, we really go all out. Lots of bass drums, really trashy hi-hats. Hit the hell out of this drum kit. And then it cuts. So the bigger you can make that section, keep it in time, but make it nice and big, make it nice and dramatic, and then it cuts away. It will be so effective live. You're not going to get these kind of notes just looking at some dots, But if you want the actual dots, note for note, then feel free to check out the full chart that is available in the link below. Last couple of things to take note of through the rest of the song up until the outro. There's some really cool fills that happen, specifically one that's full of single strokes. I've talked about single strokes and single stroke rolls and technique behind it in the other Foo Fighters video, so if you want to check that out, feel free. Just one note on the outro, all you got to do is copy the guitars. Everyone's doing what we call a unison figure, everyone playing everything at the same time. And then you're out. Make sure you keep everything nice and big and dramatic. Remember to relax through the whole song because this is a bit of a workout. This song is a hoot to play live with a band or to the original track. If you want the sheet music that goes along with it, feel free to check that out down below. But hopefully all this advice has helped you if you're in a pinch and want to learn this quickly or just want to get playing along to this song. I hope this has helped. I'll see you in the next episode. Big love. Hello everybody, this is Emma from the future, telling you that there are more videos like the one you just watched about more famous songs. So if you want to check that out, the playlist is here. Enjoy.